Hello everyone and welcome to my review of episode 4 from the second season of The Witcher show on Netflix. As usual, let me start by warning you that this video will be full of spoilers, and let's begin. Okay, we open up with Geralt and Ciri running through the woods. They hear a monster approaching, and it turns out it's our dear darling Triss.
It's good to see you again.
As I said in the previous episode, she looks better than season 1, thank goodness. She immediately settles down at Kaer Morhen, and we move on to what I thought was Oxenfurt, based on the trailers, but in fact it's Gors Velen, or Gors Velen, however you wish to pronounce it, which by the way is not too far from Oxenfurt. However, what I would like to criticize a bit here is that the show is not giving us a very good sense of distance, as well as the general weight of the journeys which characters undertake. In the end of the last episode, Yennefer and Cahir stole a horse to escape from Sodden. Now suddenly they are already in Gors Velen. And what's more, it seems that all this time Cahir never said that he actually needs to go to Cintra.
I have a mission to complete, we must get back to Cintra.
Which happens to be in the exact opposite direction of where they were traveling this whole time. It seems he also never suggested teleportation by now.
Portal us out of here.
I can't. Portals can be tracked.
But anyway, Yennefer says that she doesn't want to go to Cintra because she doesn't like Nilfgaardians and they don't like her. And then suddenly, magical wanted posters start raining from the sky. Yennefer sees one of these posters and says, okay, let's go to Cintra.
Cintra it is.
And so the question is, why exactly did they go to Gors Velen in the first place? Not to mention that Aretuza is nearby as well, and they're supposed to be avoiding the mages, I guess. But anyway, all my problems with the show are now forgotten, because I sense my favorite type of magic. We see Philippa Eilhart for the first time, even if it's only in owl form. Sadly, she doesn't do much, but Dijkstra certainly does.
Dijkstra?
Good afternoon, Your Highness.
I'll have to double check, but I think the actor who plays him was the voice of Deglan in the Vesemir anime. He was pretty good then, and he is now as well. When it comes to Dijkstra's appearance, they certainly got the size right. Now in the books, he looked more like a big, dumb oaf, essentially. There was a stark contrast between his appearance and his immense intelligence and cunning.
Gotten pretty good at communicating with this troll.
Lots of prior experience. Worked with idiots my whole life.
So he exposes a couple of traitors, and he teases the king, who by the way is Radovid's father, with promises of taking Cintra away from Nilfgaard. And then we move back to Kaer Morhen. We have a scene here that condenses and shortens quite the lengthy section of the Blood of Elves book. I actually have quite a lot to say about Ciri and Triss and the entire plot at Kaer Morhen and how all this compares to the original, but I think I'll wait until we are further into the season and we've seen everything that happens before Ciri leaves, and I'll talk about all of it then. For now though, another major change is also revealed, specifically that Netflix has removed Geralt and Triss's relationship entirely. Originally, she knew about Vesemir and Kaer Morhen in general because for a time she had lived there as Geralt's lover. Now they changed that to the fact that she was invited at some point in the past by Vesemir out of gratitude for curing Geralt after that Striga incident. And if you recall my reviews of season 1, you probably don't, it's been 2 years, I barely do, but what I'm sure about is that I was puzzled as to what they're trying to do with Triss. Originally, it was Mother Nenneke who helped Geralt in that situation, and they had to sacrifice, essentially, parts of her character in favor of having Triss there instead. Well, now, it seems it was all because they needed another reason for Triss to be familiar with Kaer Morhen. But the new question is, why? Why decide to remove her relationship with Geralt in the first place? I actually heard from one of you guys in the comments that they initially planned on having a romance between Geralt and Triss in season 2, but they changed their minds. Which could be the case because as it stands, it feels like something is off. At least to me it does. Anyway, we're back to Cahir and Yennefer, witnessing terrible racism against elves once more, and planning on stealing a boat.
The elf scum.
Which could work. Before that, however, Cahir is about to get beat up. Yennefer saves him. They fall into the sewers, and they meet another couple of elves, one of whom is actually deaf. And he brings up the wanted posters again, which apparently refer to Yennefer as a treacherous elven mage. So again with the whole Yennefer is an elf thing, which on one hand, as I mentioned in my episode 1 review, is kind of silly and pointless, and on the other, Yennefer herself said that elven mages are thought to be extinct in the Netflix world, possibly for hundreds of years. They teach that in Aretusa. We had Fringilla and Yennefer both under the impression that all elven mages are dead, but now suddenly a wanted poster appears telling everyone to look for elven mages, and nobody acts suspicious? Or surprised? But anyway, they team up and they plan on going to Oxenfurt first to get a ship to Sintra. The deaf elf appears to be growing sweet on Yennefer, but she doesn't seem very responsive.
Thankfully, men remain simple.
Now, what comes next is possibly my favorite scene in this episode. It is between Geralt and Triss, and it manages to achieve and convey a lot of good stuff in a relatively brief period of time. I think that is exactly how book adaptations should be made on TV.
No, that's exactly what we're looking for.
So anyway, first off, they neatly summarize Ciri's condition, her powers, her issues, Geralt's feelings on all of this, and so on. Then we see that he might have actually watched the Vesemir anime because he wonders if mages are behind the mutated monsters. Then Triss brings up the Battle of Sodden, and we get to see both her feelings for the friends she lost and Geralt's sadness for Yennefer. Then Triss kind of makes a move on him.
Stay with me tonight.
Triss,
Only stay.
But he rejects her.
I'm sorry.
And she takes it quite well. They portray her here as more mature and noble and less needy than she is in the books. But despite the changes, I like what they did here. With one relatively brief scene, they left both characters in a slightly more developed state than they were before, and at no point did I feel lost or confused or frustrated, so it's good stuff. I think I actually prefer Triss over Yennefer, in season 2 at least. Yennefer is just kind of annoying here, she keeps shouting and swearing and whatnot. And we're back to her. She's discussing the hardship of elves in the north, then suddenly the one who likes her gets sucked in by some octopus thing, and the other one runs away. I actually like this because I think it's for the first time that an elf is portrayed in a somewhat negative light. You know, as a coward? Although it doesn't last too long, he gets redeemed soon afterwards. So the man dies, Yennefer swears.
The fuck is the point?
Cahir deduces that she has lost her power because she used fire magic. We do see others doing fire stuff and they don't seem to be losing their power, but I guess hers was a lot bigger. And for a moment, I even thought they're trying to start some kind of romance between them.
You were incredible that day, Sodden. The fire.
And then Dandelion appears. He is singing a song because Geralt broke his heart. Which, based on my comments, is probably not quite as good as Toss a Coin to Your Witcher, because everyone was talking about that one in the previous season. But anyway, next up we have topless Dijkstra getting drunk and having a telepathic conversation with Philippa. Or maybe he's talking to himself, just assuming what she's gonna say, I don't know. But it's not a bad scene, not at all. And ultimately, they decide to send an elf to infiltrate Sintra, because you know, they plan on taking it. And what's more, the elf in question turns out to be none other than Dara. If you don't recall, this is Ciri's friend from season 1.
I don't eat rat.
Now, I think I mentioned this in the end of the last episode, but from that point onwards, most of the events in this season are completely different from the books. So things like Yennefer traveling together with Cahir, going to Gors Velen only to go to Sintra, losing her power, teaming up with the Elves, all this does not originally happen. Okay, with that out of the way, we are once again back to Kaer Morhen. The Witchers are mean to Ciri.
You never got my rucksack clean.
Triss is mean to the Witchers.
You're choosing to be ignorant arseholes, aren't you?
Another one of the things that I'd like to talk about more in the future episodes. But more importantly, we learn that the mutated monsters were in fact not the doing of a mage. Instead, they have traces of monolith dust, I think? The things I jokingly referred to as giant places of power in episode 1. So it turns out that somehow, after Ciri toppled one of them, these monsters were able to enter our world from other spheres? If I remember correctly. We will get to the proper explanation in the following episodes, but here's what I find strange so far. When Netflix produced the Vesemir anime, they went out of their way to make changes and additions to the already established lore for the sake of providing an explanation, and more so an excuse really, to have all sorts of crazy mutated monsters roaming the world. It was explained how they came to be, how the Witchers and mages were involved, how even the ancient elves were connected to them through the Kitsu girl and Filavandrel, and there were even links to the bloodline of the first human mages. Even though I wasn't a huge fan of these things, at least it meant that we could now have all kinds of monsters and still make some sense out of them, and potentially tell some interesting stories involving all the characters that I just mentioned. But later the same year, Season 2 comes out, crazy looking mutated monsters appear once again, and they immediately throw the explanation which they worked to establish under the bus. The Witchers, the mages, Vesemir, Filavandrel, the Kitsu, none of these matter anymore. I mean, I hope they might matter again in the future, but it's all about the monoliths now. So what I think is, if they have such a mutated monster fetish and they want to involve them in every installment of the Witcher franchise, at least they should settle on one explanation and work to establish it properly. At this point, I'm expecting the Blood Origin, I think is what it's called, you know, the next Witcher thing, to have even more mutated monsters and to come up with a third origin for why they exist. Another thing is that, as far as I remember, again, I haven't yet rewatched the following episodes, but I don't think we have a good reason to explain why these monsters look like they're mutants. They come from another world, essentially, but Triss said that they didn't appear to be made by mages. Yet one of them literally looks like it was spliced together from parts of 5 different monsters. So, was it created somehow and then sent to our world from another world? By the Wild Hunt, perhaps? I think that's a good theory. They actually have mages who dabble in genetics, you know, the Ensavern. And if this is what Netflix is going for, then it could be good, but if so, they should have probably involved Filavandrel and the Kitsu into it as well, instead of using them to set up something completely different. So anyway, Geralt decides he needs to leave immediately to investigate this monolith business, and therefore Triss suggests she should teleport him to Istrid, because, you know, he's kind of a mage archaeologist, which makes sense. However, earlier in the episode, Yennefer said that portals can be traced.
Portal us out of here.
I can't. Portals can be tracked.
So why is Triss not worried about exposing Kaer Morhen? You could say that Yennefer only said that as an excuse for not using her power, but Tissaia also mentioned in Season 1 that magic in general can be traced. This is how they find the young students. So Triss, I think, should be worried about revealing Kaer Morhen's location and its secrets. That is, unless one of Eskel's friends hasn't done it already.
Eskel found some friends down the mountain.
Okay, back we go to Dandelion. He looks a bit more like he does in the games now, I think. A bit of a stubble, longer hair, purple outfit. Yennefer hugs him tight, they have a drink, and she tells him that she is currently in hiding. Then he immediately assumes that it's because she's part elf.
Because you're part elf, Yennefer. I completely forgot. I'm so sorry.
And starts talking about how awful he feels for what her people are suffering through.
What they've done to you and your people is unspeakable.
And I'm like, please, enough with this Yennefer is an elf thing. Whichever way they're going with it, it's not working. Not for me anyway. So Dandelion tells them they smell bad.
Truly awful. I mean, it is like something has crawled up your asses and died. So...
Cahir sniffs Yennefer. They're trying to get on a ship, and they have to go past none other than the voice actor for Cleaver in The Witcher 3. He has a very unique and memorable voice.
Give us a kiss, Geralt. No? Then I'll smooch that roach of yours. That were lovely.
And he voices other characters too, by the way, like Hans of Sidaris.
Ha! Beat your ass good.
On top of all that, he kinda looks like the Bloody Baron. And I love it.
If you don't mind me saying so, that one, it's not your strongest.
It took me to the fourth verse to understand their different timelines.
He only has a brief scene of critiquing Dandelion's art, but it absolutely enrages the bard.
Should be heartbroken to hear a favourite bard is a steaming pile of shit for brains.
Sadly though, he's no different than the rest of the humans around here, and ultimately it all dissolves into more elf-hating, during which the previously cowardly character sacrifices himself for everyone else to make it on the ship. I like it on its own, but what I'm a little worried is that they're portraying elves in too positive of a light and humans in one that is too negative. I think we had this problem back in Season 1, and we continue having it now. So we never get to see this character again in Season 2. It will be nice if he makes another appearance in Season 3, maybe have a brief exchange with Anna Henrietta. For those of you who don't know, the actress who plays Tissaia is the voice actor for the Duchess in The Witcher 3.
Ah. At times I hunt foxes. Do you know how it works?
We get on the ship, and Yennefer has a final conversation with Dandelion about how it feels to have lost your purpose and finding a new one and so on. And I suppose Dandelion does not fully realize it, but the audience knows perfectly well that being a powerful mage is exactly what Yennefer did not care about in the first place. She claimed it was all fake, and instead she was willing to do whatever it takes to have another purpose, aka being a mother. That is literally what her entire plot in Season 1 is about. And even Season 2 opens up on the same note. So what comes next for Yennefer in this season is, in my opinion, too sudden and hard to relate to. What I'm referring to is that we have to believe that she will be willing to do anything it takes in order to regain her power, including to sacrifice Geralt's child for it. Anyone who has read the books, played the games, or even watched Season 1 knows very well that she will not actually go through with it. Unless they do a complete 180 on her character, which might be fun to watch. Imagine Yennefer actually murdering Ciri to regain her power? That will certainly be a surprise, but more on that in the following episodes. Finally, we have a scene with Vesemir and Triss. They find a flower called Fainwed, or something along those lines, which is actually in the Witcher games. And legend has it that it first started growing when Lara Dorren died. However, Netflix changed that to the flower grows wherever elder blood has been spilled. Literally. And it also is the main ingredient required to make Witchers. Yes, apparently elder blood is the key to mutating humans into Witchers. And on that note, I will end this video. I will share my opinion about this in the next episode, which is where the entire subplot is resolved anyway. So that's it for now. Let me know what you think of all this, and I thank you very much for watching. Special thanks to my supporters and YouTube members, and until the next video, stay tuned and be good.